I'm Lorraine Ballard Morrill, Director of News and Community Affairs for iHeartMedia, and I'm so happy to do this town hall meeting today on organ donation. Organ donation is an issue very close to my heart. One of my very closest and best friends, J. Wyatt Mondesire, who is the president of the Philadelphia NAACP, died waiting for a kidney transplant. And I've had other individuals throughout my life who have passed on because they were not able to get their transplant organ just in time. 95% of people across the nation believe in organ donation, but only 54% are signed up as donors. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about why it's so important, how easy it is. We're going to dispel some misconceptions, and we're going to talk to people who know everything you need to know about organ donation. Thanks to Gift of Life, which is the organization sponsoring this event today, we are going to be having this conversation. So let me begin by introducing some of the folks in the studio today. And we begin at the end with Kim Phillips. She is a nurse, and she's over at Jefferson University Hospital, and she's involved with education and outreach. We have Kenny Robinson, who is a liver recipient. We have Leslie Jean-Marie, who's multicultural outreach coordinator for Gift of Life. We have also with us Stephanie German, who is a donor mother. And at the very end, last but not least, we have Laverne Clark, who is the recipient of a heart. So let's begin with you, Leslie. Let's talk about, first of all, define organ donation for us.
Yes, thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Lorraine, for having us today. So organ donation is exactly that. You make the decision to become an organ donor. Typically, 98% of people make a decision by going to the motor vehicle or motor vehicle agency to, when they renew their license, they check off to be an organ donor. Other organ donors, as far as signing up, we normally do that when we do outreach events, like some of the outreach events we do with Power 99. But more importantly, organ donation is a choice that you make, basically your last life choice to give someone else an extension of life, someone else who needs it. And so that's pretty much what we do. We procure organs to save lives.
Right. Let's talk about more of the specifics of organ donation. There are a lot of misconceptions, aren't there, Kim, about organ donation. A lot of folks think that they won't get the most important and intense medical care if they say that they're going to donate their organs. Let's talk about some of the misconceptions that people have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Many people believe that if they check off the organ donor on their driver's license, that means when they come into the emergency room, they won't get the best care because we're looking for organ donors at that time. But that's not the truth. There's really only about 2% of people that are really actually organ donors when they come into the emergency room. And you have to, usually the cause of death is a brain injury, brain death. So that's one of the myths that is going on in people's minds,
right.
in our community.
Right, in particular. And it's multicultural and minority communities that are in the greatest need of organ donations.
It is. Actually, and I really have some good news to tell you, if I could add it in here.
Love to hear it.
Well, I have to tell you that at Jefferson, we have Dr. Jerry McCauley, who has been instrumental in looking at he's been on the board of the minority board on the United Network of Organ Sharing. And one of the things that we've just discovered, which is I'm so happy about this, because for all of the efforts of the Gift of Life and many other organ procurement agencies that are reaching out to the minorities, what we've discovered is now African Americans are donating more than ever.
Really?
Yeah, we have outpaced some of the other communities. So the education is working. I just wanted you guys to know that, and statistically we can prove it. So
that's
we're
awesome
so
news.
Happy.
Yeah, that's
so
fantastic.
Happy about that.
Well, Kenny, you are a proud recipient of an organ. You received a liver. Tell us your story. First of all, how did you find out that you needed a liver, and then what was it like to have to wait for one?
Well, I guess the story began sometime in the summer of 2013. Normal everyday activities became really hard to do. I got very weak. I had no strength. and I was getting moody. My belly started swelling up. I didn't know what was going on, and I went to see a GI doctor who gave me this test called a paracentesis, in which the fluid was removed from my abdominal area. It felt really good, and my stomach blew up again. I went back, and he told me he could not do it again because I was losing too much protein. And I said, well, what's going on? He said, that you've blown your liver. And there started the journey to my transplant.
Right, you need a liver. Livers are one of those organs you absolutely need to survive.
But I went into denial, and for months, I didn't even go get tested. I was getting plenty of letters from the University of Pennsylvania, and I ignored the letters until the symptoms were too severe that
You had no choice.
I had no choice.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's not uncommon. I'm sure that people who are given the diagnosis that they need to get an organ transplant, first of all, it's very shocking, and you probably were very afraid of the consequences of that, right? What were some of your fears?
Well, death was a fear.
That's a big one.
It was big.
Yes.
I just didn't want to lose life, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to be there for my family, and I just wanted to be there. But again, I ignored the symptoms, I ignored the signs. But when I finally went in, I completed all the testing. I was on the donor list on the 26th of December. By the December 28th, I was transplanted. I had received my liver.
Wow, that's
1 day later.
amazing. That's very quick.
Yes.
That's great. Well, we're going to get back to you in just a second, but I'd like to move on to speak with Stephanie. Stephanie, you are a donor mother. Tell us your story.
On August the 22nd, 2014, unfortunately, my son was shot and killed a half a block from the house. It was a devastating tragedy. And he was my firstborn and my only son, and I have 2 daughters. And I couldn't believe that this had happened. But later on that day, I just laid there in the bed and I didn't know what to do. But then remembering that we are a giving family, we're a loving family, and we all had organ donors on our license and our IDs. And I looked at my sons, and he had on their organ donor. So then it made the decision easy to go through with the process for him. It was easy, then it was also hard because I knew that he can help so many people, and I didn't know until I actually started volunteering for the gift of life that how much more of the human body was needed besides just regular organs. And so my son, I donated corneas, bones, muscle, and tissue. So with that, he's able to actually help save up to 50 people's lives through his donation.
That's amazing.
And that was wonderful.
Now, how important is it for people to make their wishes known? Like sometimes people have those discussions in families and sometimes they don't.
Right.
I know that in my family, I have a living will. I've told everybody that I am going to be an organ donor. But what do you say about people sharing their wishes ahead of time?
It's best to really share your wishes because sometimes some family members may want to do your wish and some people may not. But it's actually, if you really want to do for that person, then you should really, have their wishes, done. Because a lot of people didn't know, because my son had switched over to be a Muslim, that he was not able to donate. That's not true.
Right.
And he was able to do that. And we had his janaz within the 72 hours of his funeral that we needed to do.
Before I speak with our heart recipients, I would like to just kind of switch up and follow up on that question, Leslie. And that is that there are a lot of people who think that their religion keeps them from making an organ donation. But most religions are fine with it, right?
Right. So that's on our top 3 list of misconceptions. Actually, it's number 2. So the reality is that all major religions in the United States, including Islam as well as Jehovah's Witness, can certainly be organ donors, organ and tissue donors.
Well, that's good to know. And you also have all of that on your website, because I happen to just check that out. It has all the religions broken down and what the opinion is on that. And they all say it's fine. Now, Laverne,
Yes.
it's your turn.
Okay.
You have a donor heart.
Yes.
How long ago did that happen? And tell us your story.
Well, as of December, it will officially be 14 years. Briefly, my story, I was misdiagnosed in childhood. It kind of came out in a car accident at age about 19 that I had a heart issue. So after being told there really was nothing wrong with me, I didn't believe them then. But as time went on, the symptoms remained, actually got worse. So I finally, after about 3 years of being told there really was a problem, I went on and had, got checked out. And at that time, they really wasn't sure what the prognosis would be, if it would get worse, if it would stay the same, because I guess they were just really learning a little bit more about it. And as time went on, I was stabilized with medication, but it eventually got worse.
So they told you eventually that you needed to get a new heart.
Yeah, and then that came after like a series of blood clots that came due to the heart getting worse, and went through the pacemakers and all of that. And eventually, and I believe it was 2001, was when they finally kind of said, no, 02, you need a heart transplant.
What was your reaction when they told you that?
So my reaction was, so I'm dying, because meeting people that in the hospital for a short time that's been there for almost a year, and some of them have been in there for a year waiting for a heart. What made me feel as though I was going to get one. So I kind of didn't take it serious. So I kept on going and doing whatever my body was physically able to do. And when I eventually got that phone call, I told them I wasn't coming, which was like that December.
Okay. I guess they talked you out of that one, huh?
Well, yeah, my family with a lot of prayer. I don't know. A part of me felt like they were going to kill me before Christmas. So my transplant actually was December the 15th. Mm-hmm. And by me not actually planning for a transplant, but planning more for death, I was surprised to get the call.
You were surprised, and then you got the call, and then you had the transplant. 14 years later, here you are.
Yes, I am. Here I am. And
I wonder if you can tell us some of the things that you were able to experience because you lived 14 more years.
Well, I've experienced, watching my daughter get married and watching my grandchildren now grow up. The oldest is 11, and going and doing, especially in the beginning of the transplant, after the transplant, that burst of energy and the steroids had my mind thinking
like Hulk?
The steroids was amazing. It told you could do a whole lot of things. So it allowed me to run track,
Really?
things that I never could do even in high school or as a kid.
So you actually did things that you weren't able to do before the heart transplant.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And my mind told me I couldn't do it all. So, there was a thing called the Transplant Games, which consist of nothing but transplant recipients. And my first games was in Texas, I think it was. And my mind and my body said, oh, we're going to go run track. We're going to do long jump. We're going to do all of these things that I ain't never done before, because my heart is telling me, oh, we're going to do this. And I paid for every last one of them things that I did at 40-something at that time. But just being able to, something as simple as being able to bend over and wash my feet, that first, I would say 2 weeks afterwards was a great joy. Something just that simple that you take for granted was my biggest accomplishment.
Yeah, that's great. You tell the story very well. I'd like to speak with some of the ladies in the audience. Let's begin with Simone Lewis. Simone, you come on up. Uh-oh, just dropped something. That's okay. And I want you to turn around this way so we can see you. You are a liver recipient.
Yes.
Tell us your story.
Oh, well, my story started in 1994. They thought I had the flu, but really it was my liver that was going. They didn't know why, and I didn't have to wait that long. I went in March, April 12th. I had my liver transplant. They gave me like 12 hours to live, and unfortunately, a gentleman living in New York died, and I received his liver, and I got to meet his family at the transplant games in Disney World.
Now, that is the thing that I think is very moving and touching, and that is the opportunity. And it's not everyone who necessarily wants to meet the recipient or vice versa, but in your case, you had that opportunity. And what was that like?
It was, I can't even put it into words, but that's my new mother and father. And they live in Michigan.
And so they were able to see you, and they were able to see the person that they lost still live on in you.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that story. That's pretty wonderful. I'd like to have Cynthia London come up. You're a donor mother. Come on up. Come on. So tell us your story.
Well, my story is not that unique. My son, Sipo, his name was Sipo Timba, which means, it's a South African name, which means gift of hope. And so he was 22 years old, and he met with the terrible gunshot wounds. He had 5 gunshot wounds, and one was a fatal one. We had 3 months prior to that, I went to get my driving license renewed, and it was a Michael Jordan campaign. And so it said, do you want to be an organ donor? And so I signed up to be an organ donor, and I got the materials, and it talked about brain death and all the things that, come with that, and how someone can benefit from, if they died like that, they would be able to help save lives and stuff. So by me having that information, and when my son, this terrible thing happened to him about 3 months later, we had that information, and so we donated. And here it is, 20 years later, 6 people benefited from his gift. And the man received his heart, was a man who received his heart, 2 men received his but 1 lung apiece. Someone received his kidneys. 2 people received his kidneys, and then there was someone who received the liver and the pancreas. So the man who received his heart, we met their family, and so 20 years later in April, we are celebrating this beautiful union. The man was 55 when he received Sipo's heart. And now he's 70-some years old, and he's doing really great. His family is fantastic. So we have 2 sides of a story, the tragic side, but we also, when things, because losing a child is like really a horrendous situation. It's gut-wrenching. And so, but the second part of my story is that 6 other people did not have to go through that. They were all given a second chance. And to live 20 years out, it's amazing.
Sipo, that's a great name. Yeah. And tell us what it means again.
Sipo Timba, which means gift of hope. It's South African.
Yeah. He was a special kind of young man, wasn't he?
Yes, I tell everyone he was my gift, and he gave hope to 6 other people upon his death. He wanted to be an educator, and so, he comes from a family, regular people and stuff, and so he didn't get to become an educator, but to keep his legacy alive, I am a great advocate of those who are waiting for organs. And so I go out and promote that. So I guess I'm his educator. I'm being his educator.
Yeah. So you are taking on his legacy, and you're teaching others about the importance of organ donation.
Yes, yes.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. And thank you. My iPhone often flies in the air and on the floor and gets cracked, but thank you very much. Let's talk a bit about what happens when you decide, you make that decision, you become an organ donor. Your family, is decided to go ahead and make this happen. Now, one of the misconceptions is that a doctor might want to encourage someone or maybe hurry the process if there's an organ donation involved, but that's not at all the case, that the doctor who's treating you is really not the doctor who makes that decision. Is that right?
That is correct. So emergency staff and transplant surgeons, they don't even know each other. And so it's very important for folks to understand that folks in the medical business, it is their oath. This is what they do. They save lives. They always want to do everything they can to save a life.
Yeah.
So that's number one myth. So we constantly have to dispel that. And that certainly is across the color lines. No thanks to television and things of that nature.
Yeah, people in bathtubs with, full of ice with their organs removed. I've never seen movies like that, no. But you know what? That's true. I think, unfortunately, popular culture sometimes creates these myths and misconceptions, and they kind of encourage them or they underscore them. And there's some other ones that I'd like to at least address, and some people are concerned about funeral arrangements. Will organ donation interfere with a funeral situation?
Yeah, absolutely not. You will still be able to have your funeral, and your loved one, if you're going to have open casket, will be absolutely fine. It will not disturb that in any way.
Right. All right. So, Kenny, what are some of the things that you've been able to experience since your transplant?
Walking and talking, breathing. I, too, have seen my grandkids grow up. When I was diagnosed, my granddaughter, I remember her in the nursery and looking at her saying, "Oh, my God, your pop-pop's not going to see you grow up." And she's now 4 years old. She just said to me the other day, "Pop, I got a taste for Rita's water ice and a pretzel." And I got in the car and took her in for a pretzel and water ice. But just life in general, all the things that, like she said, we take for granted, I can experience. And I work in the hospital at the University of Pennsylvania in the OR, so I see the surgeons who operated on me all the time. And most times, they see transplant patients, they do them, and they take off. You never see them again. But they get to see me every single day, so they know that it works because I'm alive and clicking.
Yeah.
And I'm purring like a kitten.
You're a poet and you know it.
Yes, indeed.
Leslie, is there any age limit for organ donation?
No, there's no age limit. We all know that all types of people are given life, and all types of people pass away. And so various organs for various people and sizes and tissue and blood. And so that's why it's so important for everybody to say yes. So we have more organs to go around, because as you know, even though there's been a lot of increase, we still have close to 118,000 people in the nation waiting.
Right.
It takes about 5 years to get a kidney, about 11 months maybe for a liver. It depends on the status with the heart. But people wait so long, and so many people are lost.
Yeah, and it can be very stressful. And the last time we met, I think I shared the story of a young man that I knew who went to MIT and who ended up ending his life because at that time, and we're talking about the early 70s, organ donation was certainly in its infancy at that point. And he was waiting for a transplant, and it just wasn't coming, and I don't think people were aware. And he finally was so depressed, he couldn't take it anymore. Yeah. And that's a very sad story, because as I mentioned then, he was a young man who went to MIT, smart guy, helped us start a student radio station, really amazing young man. And we lost him. And again, Jerry Mondesire, who was such a great friend of mine and was such a tremendous leader in the city, is no longer here because he wasn't able to get a transplant in time. And so that's why it's so very important. And I know that, Stephanie, you're really all about informing families, informing all of us about how important it is to have the conversation with your family members about organ donation. So it's really clear that this is what our wishes are.
Yes, I think it's very clear. I forgot to mention my son's name. His name is Cornell Dashiv Druitt, and he was 38 years old at the time. He has 4 beautiful children. And it's really important because all of my family really didn't understand at first what it was that I was doing. But I had to school them about the importance of this. This is something that he had on his life. This is what he wanted to do. And this is what me and my children had talked about. So it was just basically making sure that all of the family understood what was being done with him and why I go out so much too and talk about the gift of life and talk about organ donation because it's important.
Right. It's very important to have that conversation with your family and friends. Laverne, you are a feisty individual who decided that you could high jump and long jump and run and all that stuff. Have you done any more of those organ donation Olympics, or just the one?
No, I did quite a few. I think I've done about 6. But
Did you win any medals?
yeah.
Okay, let's not be modest here.
Yes, I did. my first time out, I came home with 2 medals, and that was such a boost to my personal ego, to think that, look at what I did. I mean, I was really, really proud of myself because, like I said, it was something I couldn't do when I was younger. But as time went on, my body eventually said, no steroids came down. My body was like, fool, you can't do that no more. So I now kind of, the last go round, I tried to bowl, but I have other issues going on. So just being around actually a group of people that we all had something in common. I'm talking about black, white. They came from all over, all kinds of backgrounds, that we could all be there together celebrating life, like cheering each other on. You don't even, so now I look forward to going to see people that I met from Florida and all across the country just to see how they're doing and encouraging each other. And that's when we really have our chance to talk and sometimes see what's going on. We find, I think like 3-4 years ago, I literally learned from going to a donor families program that they had that I literally was suffering from what they call survivor guilt.
Interesting.
And it took a donor families to get me out of my head that you kind of don't think you really, felt this way, but that's what it came out to be, that I literally was living with survivor guilt. Like, why me when there's so many other people that was on the list? And so it took
real.
really a while.
Real.
Yeah, it was really kind of crazy because doing that whole process of knowing that you need an organ to live, you kind of caught in this middle, for me anyway, of a prayer of, am I to pray for somebody to die that's a match, so I can live? How do you get, how do you pray for something like that? So, even though life is better for us, we definitely feel for the donor families. We definitely cannot do anything without thinking about the donor family because you have the scars. Every time you go, take a shower, you're seeing this particular, this scar, and you know that without somebody saying yes, that you wouldn't be here. But you also then learning, have to know that it was really their time to go. It wasn't like a donor family, they just didn't die just to say, I'm going to go save somebody else. That it was really just their time, and it was just an opportunity, a chance that you were a match. So that literally helped me out a lot in my process that I didn't know that I kind of was suffering from.
That's the first time I've heard that talked about, so I'm so glad you brought it up. I think that's a very important point, and one that's like I said, it's real. It's it's probably a very common experience that people have, but I'm so glad that you're over it now. Yeah. So I wonder if you can kind of, Kim, just share with us some stories of people that you've worked with, because you've certainly worked with people who are transplant recipients.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting listening to her story because I primarily deal with kidney and pancreas patients. And those patients, we have dialysis, and so the urgency isn't quite as great. But one of the things that struck me when you were talking was that you have to be prepared. And by being prepared, I mean you have to be on a transplant list. So you have to come to the list. I do have a story for you. We had a patient who he'd been on dialysis 10 years. And the reason he was on for so long was because first he was afraid. Then he felt, even with all of the, even with all of the pressure he felt at his dialysis center, because every day they told him, you should get on the list. You're 30 years old. You're 38 years old. You should get on the list. Finally, a new thing came about, something called the kidney allocation system. And one of the biggest changes with the kidney allocation system was that you got credit for all of the time that you had been on dialysis. So they said, look, now's the time, because as I told you, it's only about 5 years. Well, not only, that's a long time. 5 years to wait to get a kidney transplant when your name starts coming up and we start cross-matching you. And so he's already got 10 years. So his doctor said, listen, now's the time, get on the list. And so they kept pressuring him. So he came to the center, he got on the list, and in 4 months he was transplanted.
That's great.
It's a wonderful thing. And one of the reasons he didn't come for transplant was he had a business, and he didn't want to leave his business. He thought he would be critically ill afterwards, and there'd be months that would go by where he couldn't run his business. But it's not really so. Healthcare has come a long way in transplantation. And even in kidney, you can get your transplant, you can be out in a week, and within 6 weeks, you could be back on your job, which is where he is right now, running his company. Yeah, we just had an article about him in Philly.com.
That is a great story. I'd like to talk about living donors, because that's another aspect that doesn't always get talked about. I also have a friend who donated her liver to her mother. And in fact, you can donate a kidney rather, to someone, because you can live with one kidney, right?
Yes, you can live with one kidney, also a lobe of your lung and a section of your liver as well.
Right.
Yes, and actually now more and more, and Kim can piggyback off of that, there are more people who are stepping up to actually be a living donor because of that waiting list for a kidney. And we all know kidney is what we like to call a hot organ. That's the organ that's in demand.
Right. And not only that, not only are family members doing it, but sometimes strangers. Yes. There's a certain name for them, right?
Yes, altruistic donors.
Yeah.
You can actually get kidneys in so many ways now. Not only can you get on the list and wait for a donor family to donate and become one of the lucky ones to get that organ, but you can have a mother, father, sister, brother, friend come and get tested to be a living donor. So we have altruistic donors. Those are donors who they just want to give a kidney to somebody. They've heard about it. They think they can help somebody. They want to come. And so then you run a list, you find the person, and that person gets that kidney, because you can live with one kidney.
Right.
Okay. And then we have swaps. And we have programs where if you come with your mother or your donor, and your donor cannot give you a kidney because they are incompatible with you for some medical reason, or with antibodies, they can go into a pool of people who have that same problem. And so now we can look at each other and see if maybe your mother can give to my father, and then we can swap kidneys that way. And and then sometimes we do chains with these altruistic donors, who are my favorite. Okay, they come, they don't need anything. They're not giving a kidney. They don't need to give a kidney to anybody. They just want to give to somebody. That can start a chain. And I can give my kidney, and now you can get one, and now your donor can give to somebody else, and then you'll get one, and your donor will give to somebody else. It's a wonderful thing to see happen. We did 30 donors and 30 recipients across the United States, and we were in the New York Times for that. It was a beautiful thing. So many people were transplanted that way.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
So one person can really make a difference.
Well, when you think about the medical technology around organ donation, I remember a time when it was the first heart transplant.
Yeah.
And it was just a miracle that happened. And they also had the first kidney transplants as well. And at that time, it was a medical miracle. But now these miracles are happening every day.
Yeah, it is. And, it's so important at the transplant centers that we get that information out to everybody. At our center at Jefferson, we've started a new program, Lorraine, and I want to tell you about this. It's called the Kidney Champion Sessions, is what we're calling them. And what we do is we invite all the family and friends of the people that are on the wait list to a session where we teach them how to use social media, how to write a letter to a church, or just how to talk to somebody about organ donation, not about their being a donor, just talk about organ donation. And we have had friends of friends come forward to be tested. It's an amazing thing. I have a story about that. I started calling the patients on the list, because we're trying to think outside the box. Who are we not talking to? And what we don't know is your family and your friends. So I started calling everybody on the list. I spoke to a woman, and she started crying right away because she had wanted to give her husband a kidney, but she was hypertensive, so she couldn't do it. And so she came to one of our sessions. She went back. She talked to her husband's coworkers, and one of them came forward to be tested. And so that, we're just looking for ways, more and more ways, to get the information out to the community and just talk about living donation.
Well, August is a very special month. Tell us about that.
It is. August 1st through August 7th, National Minority Donor Awareness Week. It's a national observance. And we take that week not only to reflect on folks who have passed away and have generously decided to give the gift, but also folks who have survived it. But more importantly, we always say this, Ms. Cynthia, who's in the audience, we always say this, our struggle is real because we're still fighting for people who are waiting. So we try to do different events, outreach events, different forums like we have with you, just to have folks in our community understand, this is real. Everybody knows someone who has diabetes or high blood pressure, and it's not going to go away.
And it just takes 30 seconds to sign up, right?
30 seconds, visiting donors1.org. You have your information from your state ID or your license, and you sign up in 30 seconds. And then when you do go back to renew your license, when they ask you if you want to be an organ donor, you check yes. It feels really good to say yes.
Absolutely. Organ donors are heroes for sure. 95% of people out there in the country believe in organ donation, but only 54% are actually signed up. We want to make sure that low number matches the high number so that 100% of people who believe in them actually sign up. I am so very moved by all of you. It's so wonderful to hear your stories, to see how this has impacted your lives and how you have impacted other people's lives, to see that, you did the long jump and got a couple of medals and that you got to get Reader's Water Ice for your grandchild. That's pretty awesome. And that your sons were responsible for the lives of so many people, and that this young lady over here is alive and well, got to meet her donor family, and to really have that connection that is everlasting. And I want to thank you all for being here again. And just to remind everybody, Kim Phillips, who is a nurse, education and outreach person over at Jefferson, Kenny Robinson, a liver recipient, Leslie Jean-Marie, who is the multicultural outreach coordinator for Gift of Life, Stephanie German, who's a donor mother, and the one and only Laverne Clark, Olympic medalist, heart recipient, and a wonderful inspiration, along with Cynthia London, who is a donor mother, and Simone Lewis, who is a liver recipient. So once again, the website is?
It's donors1.org.
Check it out, sign up on your driver's license, living will, which is what I have. Tell your family, your friends, this is what you want to do. You want to be a potential donor, and let's try to get the word out. And thank you all for helping us do that today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank
I'm Lorraine Ballard Morrill.